everybody. Welcome to episode 4 of Ethical Ball. I'm Jared. That's Damon. The time is 5:38 on August 10th. Damon, how are you doing?
Doing all right. Got in-service next week, PD, professional development, so I have that to look forward to. Yay. Aside from that, not much going on. Been a fine weekend. How about yourself?
Yeah, it says something that I'm a little bit jealous of having in service, but week's been okay. Been on the job hunt, and it's interesting to see what opportunities are out there. And I feel like I've gotten better at writing cover letters, hopefully, over the last few months. So, other than that, been chilling out, having fun, grinding through some video games, and hopefully going to finally put a few more to rest soon. With that said, do you want to? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just said felt.
Felt. I appreciate. Yeah. I don't know about you. When I game, I typically have 2 or 3 games going, and then I'm trying to knock one of them out at a time so I can focus on the other one and then knock that out to focus on the third one.
See, that's why I can't do that, because I'll never finish one of them if I have multiple. So typically I have one big single-player game, which right now is Expedition 33. Then I have, like, Hearthstone, which I play while I eat or while I'm making shorts or something like that, because it's relatively a multitask-appropriate game. And then I have a couple of multiplayer games that I'll play with friends. So I have, like, games per situation.
That's fair. I don't end up multiplayer gaming a lot, and so maybe that's where my balance kind of differs. But I like to... Recently, I've had games that are narrative. Like, I have my one big narrative game that is both gameplay and story involved. That's Final Fantasy X. And then I'll have games that are either level-based stuff, like Cyberhook is one where you're just hooking through levels as fast as possible, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Or a game I just finished a game, 1000X Resist. Very interesting and beautiful narrative. Almost no actual gameplay. There's no real combat. You're just kind of playing through a story. So, yeah, I don't think I could do 2 or 3 major titles at a time, but I like to have some variance, because whenever I get stuck in a game, I get angry, and when I get angry, I'm not having fun. And games are supposedly for having fun. So
that's what they tell us.
It's what they tell us. And with that said, let's go to the big game of our podcast, which is football, of course.
Football.
And start off with some news. You put this item on our list here, so why don't you start us off?
Yeah, something that's not fun for this player, Jordan Addison, getting suspended for the first 3 games of this season. So he will not be there for J.J. McCarthy and the Vikings offensive attack. Remind me, what is he suspended for? Do you know?
What is Jordan Addison suspended for? I figured you knew. That's a great question.
I feel like I feel like with him and Rasheed
I thought it was
Rice,
PEDs potentially, but
I feel like with him and Rasheed Rice, they both had things last year that they could have gotten suspended for, and it got pushed to this season. So it's been a long time since I remember what the case was.
It is substance abuse. It looks like. He pleaded no contest to a lesser charge to resolve a DUI citation. So that actually, I think, is a relatively similar situation to Rasheed Rice, who also was charged.
Still waiting on that one. Still waiting on the news there from the league.
Yep, we were. I think the legal side that's come down, but we haven't gotten the league's verdict on that. But you're right. Resolving those DUI cases and reckless driving, it feels like a very preventable thing to get in trouble for, but
it is. You don't drink and drive. The end. That's you're no longer getting in trouble for it. I mean, you can look back throughout the history of time, obviously, but even in the NFL, you have Henry Ruggs, for example, right? Was a big one a couple of years ago. Drinking, driving, got into an accident, killed somebody. So don't do it. Simple.
Yes, that is. I think that's good advice for anyone. I'm glad we on Ethical Ball can give you the cold hard truth, which is don't drink and drive. And Yeah, that's a blow for the Vikings for sure. I think having a strong number 2 receiver is a big part of today's game for a lot of the top teams. Even if it's not necessarily a wide receiver, you want that number 2 pass catcher. Outside of Justin Jefferson now, I don't know who jumps
Hawkinson.
into that spot. Yeah, they do have Hawkinson. Former Lions legend TJ Hawkinson, who
Yes,
could
sir.
maybe pick up some of the slack there for sure. But let's move on in our rundown here to, I would say, probably the biggest story of the preseason in terms of in-game action. This was Morice Norris's injury in the Lions-Falcons preseason game. So I was watching this game live. They called an injury timeout. Morice Norris was hurt. They cut to commercial. We come back. They show that it's head and neck injury. They cut to commercial 2 more times. Finally, he's being carted off in an ambulance. It might have been at that point 3 full commercial breaks or 4 commercial breaks before they finally load him up. I believe it was 12 minutes he spent on the field. The entire Lions sideline comes out to support him as he's being carted away. And they showed Morice, the head coach of the Falcons, talking with Campbell. Campbell having an impromptu conference with the entire team on the field. And then the players come out for the next play. The Falcons snap the ball and then just hold it. The players start talking with one another. They get into a prayer circle and just kind of opt not to continue the game. And eventually, after 5, 6, 7 minutes of standing around, the league office calls down from New York and they officially suspend the game. Fortunately, Norris, I believe, has been discharged and is on his way home, feeling in the extremities, was not permanently paralyzed in any way that we know of. But it was a really scary situation. I got very emotional. A lot of the players were very emotional. And something that harkens back to the Damar Hamlin situation a few years ago. But very difficult. And anytime you see the players choose not to continue the game, that's a sign it was a pretty big injury.
Yeah, football is obviously known as a full contact, physical, and dangerous sport. There's been lots of injuries throughout our time as football fans. And then there have been, as the stories about CTE and stuff as well, post-football career. So something that is dangerous and lingers. And these things unfortunately happen. We've seen, I feel like, more and more in recent years, which is weird because, theoretically the equipment is better and we study it a lot more and stuff. But feels like, I think of this. You mentioned the Damar Hamlin. Think of Tua the last couple of years has had some scary ones on the field. So I feel like when I was a kid, I don't remember this happening as much. But maybe I just don't. Maybe I wasn't tuned in as much. I don't know.
Yeah, it was interesting because one of the Lions radio commentators who works the preseason, Lomas Brown, was a Lions player in the 90s, and we had an offensive, I want to say it was an offensive lineman. I was not alive for this, but was paralyzed by an injury on the field, has since regained, I think, feeling in the upper extremities, famously gave a thumbs up as he was carted off the field. But there are these stories that kind of get lost to time about these injuries because typically those games continue, right? And so seeing the game end and the players make that conscious choice may go far in changing the dialogue, as it is such a literal representation of putting a player's health before the game that it kind of shifts the focus a little bit. But it was very, very powerful, very difficult, and it was a huge relief to hear that Norris sounds like he will be relatively okay.
Yeah, like you said, he's been discharged and all that. I think he made a social media post as well about it. So stuff you like to see afterwards. Definitely scarier when it's just like silence all throughout. So
yeah, a very affecting moment in the preseason games. Their outcomes don't have any bearing on the regular season, but for so many players in the preseason, this is determining whether they can have a career playing the game that they love, and their health is still on the line, their livelihoods are on the line. So it's a reminder that even when the games don't show up in that final regular season record, they matter and they're very substantive to the people involved. I hate to continue the bad news train, but there have been a number of injuries this week that have knocked players out for the season. I was thinking I would just go down the list, and you can stop me when you want to talk about these injuries, but there's a lot of names to get through.
A lot of names, not a ton of time. Still have a whole segment, so let's just preface it by saying, obviously, we hope that all of these players get as healthy as soon as they can. Hope that they can continue their playing careers as they want to, if they want to. Sucks to see all of these injuries happen in the preseason, of course, in training camp. A lot of stuff has happened as well. Couldn't even, make it like we're not even in the season yet, and we already see this amount of names on here. So that's unfortunate for those players. I'm not sure, I'm sure some of these guys are in contract years or prove-it years, kind of. So sucks that opportunity is kind of taken away from them. Wish them nothing but the best.
Yeah, not all of these players are necessarily at the top of the roster at their respective positions, and so we might give a little more focus to some of these injuries than others, but that doesn't make the impact on those players any less significant. That being said, let's go ahead and just jump in here. I'll start with two Lions. Cornerback Enos Rakestraw, 2024 second-round pick at cornerback, out for the season with a shoulder injury, and 2025 seventh-round pick Dan Jackson, the safety, is out for the season on IR as well for the Lions. Moving ahead to the Ravens, sixth-round rookie Bilal Cohn was injured in the preseason game one and is out for the season with a knee injury. Dallas Cowboys guard Rob Jones injured his neck, has been moved to IR and will be out for the season, as will Denver Broncos defensive lineman Matt Henningsen, tore his Achilles. Green Bay offensive lineman Travis Glover is out for the season. I'm going to skip that safety and come back to that one. Colts third-round pick Justin Wally, a corner, out for the season with a torn ACL. Jags corner Levi Wallace out for the season. Chiefs safety Deion Bush out for the season with an Achilles tear. Dolphins tight end Jalen Conyers goes to IR, so he's out for the season as well. I'm going to come back to that one later as well. Patriots running back Lan Larison moved to the IR with foot injury. Patriots cornerback Marcellus Dial tore his ACL and is out for the season. I want to clarify also for folks who aren't necessarily familiar with injured reserve, this is a list of players who don't necessarily count against the roster, but if they're put on injured reserve during the season, early enough in the season, they're eligible to return. Teams can return up to 8 players or return players up to 8 times if a player returns twice during the season. If they go to IR before the season starts, that means they are ineligible to play for the entire season if it's before week one. So when I say goes to IR, that means they are out for the season.
I guess that makes sense because the rosters are so much larger right now that you don't need to put people on IR before the actual season starts, which is, I guess, is something we should clarify too. The roster size, right? Where the typical roster size is going to be 53 people in the NFL right now. What is it, 85 or something like that? Right? The rosters are a little bigger in the preseason.
Yeah, they start out at 90 and then cut down from 90. So almost twice as large a roster at this point in the year. Yeah.
Yeah, and then IR also, I don't think you said this. Maybe I'm wrong and insane. Once the season starts, if you go on IR, you have to miss at least 4 weeks of football before you can return. But like you mentioned, it doesn't count as a roster spot. So put somebody on IR, you can pull somebody up from your practice squad or free agency or whatever to try to replace that person.
Yes, and I think part of the reason why these players are out for the season is that you don't want teams who maybe have 65 players they wish they could put on their 53-man roster. 10 to 12 of our guys are banged up, and so we're going to put them on IR. Now they don't count for our roster. I think this is a way of kind of preventing IR from becoming a list of players that you can just sort of call back when you need them, if you need them later in the year, that kind of thing. And there are other designations for players who are injured but who are not placed on IR that may miss a certain amount of time. There's more nuance to this. I won't go too deep into it now, but that's the basic understanding. If they're on IR right now, they're out for the season. They go on to IR during the season. They have to wait at least 4 weeks. Then they can return. Saints offensive lineman Nick Saldiveri is out for the season with a knee injury, picking up on our list where we left off. Steelers defensive tackle Dean Lowry out for the season with an ACL injury. Niners wide receiver Equanimous St. Brown signed 3 days before his injury, the brother of Amon-Ra St. Brown. injured his foot and is out for the season. Seahawks safety AJ Finley is out for the season with a knee injury. Commanders offensive tackle Lucas Niang and tight end Tyree Jackson are both out for the season with injuries. And then a few higher profile injuries. Let's start with a trade you brought up just last week. So the Houston Texans trading for CJ Gardner-Johnson, his leg now injured. How do you think this changes the outlook for the Texans in the near term, as this is not expected to be season ending?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think originally the reporting was that it could have been. And then there was further reporting that came out that was like, no, his knee is still intact. And I'm like, okay, that's good. I'm glad. I'm glad his knee is intact. I mean, I kind of mentioned it when I talked about it last week. I honestly think this is more of a like culture locker room thing than a on the field thing. Not saying that the Texans have the greatest safeties in the world, but I feel like he can still kind of deliver that role from that perspective. I do think it will impact the field to some extent, obviously, if he's not out there. But we're going to talk about the AFC later today. I don't foresee this super impacting the Texans' chances winning a very weak AFC South.
Yeah. Not a division that's going to put up a ton of resistance to Houston, but definitely not. You never want to see a player who you see as part of the roadmap, if not being maybe in your starting 11 defenders in those top 13, 14 players, oftentimes depending on the package, right? What kind of players, what kind of defense you're trying to play, you might want more people in the backfield. So even if he wasn't a starting safety, he might have been their third defensive back in that sort of safety room who would come back out. So it's definitely going to be some sort of loss in the field, as you said, but he is also very much a vocal player. And I think that, as you mentioned, that won't go away just because he's injured. The other side of this trade was offensive lineman Kenyon Green. It was a player-for-player swap. Kenyon Green got injured on the same day that Gardner-Johnson got injured. He was carted off. Turned out to be a wrist injury. It doesn't look like it's a long-term injury for Green. He might be back relatively soon. I couldn't get a clear timeline, but it was just sort of a coincidence I saw mentioned a lot in the NFL internet sphere that they both ended up getting hurt on the same day.
Yeah, that is wild.
Yeah, it's the odds of that, not even close to the same position, completely different teams. There was one injury this week that is likely to be the most impactful on this season, and that is Chargers tackle Rashawn Slater. He received a mere few weeks before his injury the largest offensive line contract in NFL history, 4 years, $114 million. Also made 2 Pro Bowls his rookie year and then last season making the Pro Bowl. How do your feelings about the Chargers change, or do you want to save that for when we talk about them later?
Yeah, I mean, the feelings, they definitely change a little bit, right? Offensive tackle, we mentioned before, the kind of premium offensive line position. And Rashawn Slater has been doing a great job of that for Justin Herbert over there and the Chargers offense. So it is unfortunate that he's going to miss some time. I feel like this is a team that we've talked about are almost constantly putting the pieces together, and they can never quite do it. And then now here we go. Before the season even starts, we miss a key piece. Something that you're not going to think about when you're setting your fantasy lineup, of course, but something that will matter for actual football results for this team. And also interesting because obviously being a tackle, blocking what I assume is the blind side. I assume he's on the left side for Herbert.
He is, yeah.
They just drafted Amari Hampton. They have Najee Harris. I feel like they were going to kind of have a dynamic run game. That will also be impacted here. So, just lesser offensive efficiency over there in LA, I imagine.
Yeah, I saw some speculation that former number 5 overall pick Joe Alt, who's the right tackle for them, would rotate to left. But that still means, on your right side, that's a third offensive tackle. And so that can end up making you a little more predictable when you have to run consistently to your best tackle, and defenses can game plan for that, right? And they can also take advantage of wherever that mismatch is going to be along the offensive line. So something worth worth keeping an eye on, and something I definitely factored in the exercise we're about to get into. A couple little preseason bits and bobs here. Arizona Cardinals, they re-signed guard Will Hernandez. He got hurt last year and I think is still getting cleared to return from his injury. So I don't know if he'll be on the field week 1. He might be projected as a backup for them, but a player I definitely recognized at the offensive line. And so figured to be worth mentioning. And then a couple noteworthy incidents from games. What are these big moments or big takeaways from the preseason games, Damon? Why don't you take it away for this?
Yeah, real quick. We skipped this one. We didn't go back. Former Cardinals receiver, now Vikings receiver, Rondale Moore, likely out for the season with a leg injury. And their center, Zeke Correll, broke his ankle in the preseason game. That sounds terrible. So, unfortunate for the Vikings. We already mentioned the Jordan Addison news, too. So, another receiver down in the depth chart for them, as well as an offensive lineman.
Yeah, and Rondale Moore, unfortunately, was injured for, I believe, all of last year as well. So, and he got hurt on the first play of the game. It's just a really terrible thing to see. Yeah.
He's like 5'8", 160 pounds. Fragile guy.
Yeah, he's a pretty slight guy, and yeah, it's. I think a lot of players talk about how challenging it can be emotionally to return from injury, and so to have to face that again so soon after coming back is really tough.
But yeah, a couple things worth mentioning. Cam Little of the Jacksonville Jaguars, right before halftime, hit a 70-yard field goal, which, if this were an NFL regular season game, would be the NFL record. But it is a preseason game. So we were talking about, before we started recording, that they have to give him a shot in a real game scenario. You're down, 30 to whatever team because you're the Jaguars and you're horrible. And just let him go out there and try to kick a 67-yarder. Just get the NFL record by 1 yard or whatever.
Yeah. I'd like to forget the time where the record was broken, so I'm perfectly okay with that. That was
off
very
the crossbar.
painful.
It was wild.
For fans who don't know, the Ravens scored a game-winning 66-yard field goal against the Lions to set the field goal record, and
Texas
I would love to
legend,
see that lost
Justin
history.
Tucker.
Yes, legend minus every terrible thing that's come to light about Justin Tucker.
Yeah,
so
not a good guy. He also went from the best kicker in the NFL to released in 1 year. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of he really did have a fall from grace, and he already wasn't playing very well last year, and so then all of this comes out about him, and I don't foresee Justin Tucker returning to the field anytime soon for any team. His career might be over. And then what was this other item? This is
what,
of course, this buzzy player, really, right?
Shedeur Sanders had a decent preseason showing for the Browns. He threw 2 touchdowns, I believe, when I remember watching. One of them was kind of crazy. It was back corner of the end zone, 3 defenders there. And I feel like when I watched the play, I was like, what about that guy that's wide open right there? And then he threw it to a guy that was surrounded by 3 other guys. But to be fair, it was a pretty pinpointed pass kind of right where only the receiver could get it, despite other defenders being around. So he looked good. Of course, Dylan Gabriel out right now with the injury. 40-year-old Joe Flacco not playing in the preseason makes sense. So,
and then Kenny Pickett also banged up. Yeah. So I think Sanders started by virtue of that.
Don't forget about Tyler Huntley that they signed.
How could I forget about Snoop Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley?
Yeah, went from backup to Pro Bowler. That should tell you everything you need to know about the Pro Bowl right there. Yeah,
let's emphasize. Yes, Rashawn Slater, we cited making 2 Pro Bowls. The fact that he's the highest paid offensive tackle should tell you the impact of his loss. I feel like when you bring up the Tyler Huntley Pro Bowls don't matter as a stat anymore.
Yeah, players just decline the Pro Bowl. They're like, I don't want to play, so then they just kind of go down the rabbit hole until they find someone who's willing to suit up.
Yeah, it's do they do that in the NBA? Can you decline the All-Star game? Or
I don't think so. I'm maybe you can't. I've never seen it done. I think you get voted as an All-Star, but for example, last year LeBron didn't play in the All-Star game because he was injured, but I don't know if he was really injured or if he was just I don't want to play. Which sucks because if you tell them before, they'll get an injury replacement, and then somebody else can be an All-Star. But it was the day of. He was like, I'm not going to play, so they didn't have time to give that kind of extra all-star spot out.
That's kind of a shame. I wonder if that's part of why the NBA All-Star Game has been so lackluster, is because I imagine if you are, and you told me about the WNBA All-Star Game and how there were some relief players who weren't necessarily the first picks for the All-Star Game who still ended up being a big part of the final result. And I wonder if the product is improved by getting players who are excited to be there and want to show out. I feel like that would maybe make it a cooler thing. But
For sure.
yes, Shedeur Sanders will likely be the MVP of the league this year because of one preseason game, and his coronation is nigh.
That's what we learned today. That's the important news.
Yeah. Okay, that is going to cover our news for this week. We're going to jump into a segment that we're going to break up over 2 weeks. We wanted to predict the record for every single team in the league, which meant predicting every single game in the league in 2025, more or less. And so we're going to start with the AFC this week, save the NFC for next week, because talking about all 32 teams again, we want to try to get ourselves out of this podcast before midnight. So we have a policy, end the podcast on the same day you start. So
I love,
with that said,
I love the long podcast, but I don't think it's everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay,
Oh, I don't mind the long podcast either. I could listen to myself talk, and I could listen to you talk all day. But for the sake of those who don't have hour-long commutes, I know we've got to make it a little more bite-sized. And besides, it lets us maybe get a little bit more in-depth on each team, which I think is good, without having to feel guilty about it, because we're talking about 32 teams. We're only talking about 16, and we battled, we discussed, we've decided we're going to start with the AFC this week and then move to the NFC next week.
And I got a wheel to figure out what division we're going to start with.
Let's go.
Is that how you want to do it? Do you want to do division by division, and then at the end we can kind of lay out the seeding based on these? Because I figured that was better than just going like 1 to 16.
Yeah, that works for me. My one Achilles heel is I can kind of only look at one team at a time, so that works for me.
Okay. You want to talk about your process up before we get started? Like how we both kind of did this?
Yeah, so I put together a spreadsheet with some help from some resources I found on Reddit, and my girlfriend, thank you, Addie, for that. And I just went through and picked every game, and then I had it automatically compile based on my picks what the team records are on another page. And so the fun thing about that is I actually don't know what the final records are for each team based on what I've chosen. I just chose the games, so I followed my gut as best I could. There were a lot of games on the schedule that truly I just saw a coin flip. That's all I could envision in my mind. But try to go off hunch, who's home, who's away, time of the year, vibes, how did they performed in my simulation, 2 weeks earlier? Is that going to affect how they perform this week? So all that to say, I have a feeling I have a few teams that won 16 games and a few teams that won 1 game, and we're going to see when those teams bear out. How about yourself? What was your process here?
Yeah, I had a way worse process. I like your process a lot. My process was I had the entire schedule pulled up, every team's 17-game slate, and I went through division by division, and I looked at it, and I thought about the teams. I did consider home and away as a factor for teams that I like. For example, teams that are in divisions with each other, and I think they're relatively close in terms of team talent. I was like, okay, 1-1, they'll both win the home one.
Yep. Because I did that a lot as well, honestly. Yeah.
And then there were some teams like, a spoiler for next episode, the Saints, where I found it very hard to give them wins. It was difficult.
Yep. But I said 1 in 16 teams. They might be one of them. Yeah.
So there was, that's kind of how we went. And then afterwards, I went back and looked, and to be fair, I went through each team one by one, and I could have picked games differently when I went through. I could have said this team is going to win, and then went back through for the other team and said that team's going to win. So my records aren't going to be perfect. I'm okay with that. But at the end, I went back and looked at like my records, and I was like, does this feel right? Like, do I feel good about this? And then every now and then there was a team that I was like, this feels like one win too much. I'm gonna take. I don't know what win I'm taking away, but I'm taking away a win from that team, and adding it to another team or something like that.
I am sure that it's going to come out pretty clean, and I think there's enough games in the season where no one's going to bat an eye if one or two of them get flipped around. A lot of them, again, we'll maybe go over some of those games in particular. There were a lot of games. There's 5 or 10 teams in the league that I sort of cluster as like between 6 and 10 wins in my brain, and it seems like all of those teams played each other. And then it was, oh, these are the 4-win teams, and then all of them played each other, and so it was
a great thing that you bring up. Strength of schedule was really important in this exercise. Some teams I was like, man, you just end up with like 12 wins because you just play some bad teams. Like you are just playing the bottom of the barrel all year. That's awesome for you. And then some teams I was like, wow, you play a lot of good teams. Sorry, your record's going to be worse than I think it should be.
I saw a lot of people talking about, we'll get to Detroit next week, but they were like, oh, their strength of schedule is tough. And I was like, yeah, but we can take it. And then I was looking at each week, and I was like, man, there's 5 or 6 games here that are very, very challenging games. Okay, before we spin the wheel, I want to add a wrinkle, and you could veto this if it's too last minute.
Yeah.
I think it would be fun as we go over these schedules, because we went through every single game. Is there a game that you think is like a must-watch game for this team, and then also a game that you could see being a season-defining game, make or break? Is it an easy game before a hard slate, and you got to win that one to keep your momentum? Is it a challenging matchup that if you can win, you prove to yourself you're more of a contender than you thought? If you don't have those for every team, that's cool. I don't necessarily have them dialed up, but when you look at every game, you form impressions. So,
yeah, I mean, I don't have that currently pulled up. Or I didn't think about that, I guess. I mean, I could look it up and spitball some things at you. I mean, that wouldn't be horrible. I'm trying to find the document that I used to do this now, because that is what I will need to really pull this off. So let me spin the wheel while I look for that.
Yes.
And I'll let you know what we get to. AFC West. Starting with a banger of a division, I think.
Yeah. Do we want to start with?
Why don't you just want to do 4-1? You just want to tell me your records, or do you want to go one team at a time?
Let's go
4-1
4-1, because I think that'll let us put emphasis where we want to put emphasis. And because I can only really look at one team at a time, that's the downfall of the great spreadsheet. I'm just going to go in alphabetical order, starting with Denver. Oh boy, that was ambitious of me. I suppose I have Denver winning 13 games this year, which is
awesome. I guess this is how many games.
I guess. I think I feel very confident in how well constructed the Broncos roster is. A lot of my thinking was, who's going to be good, who's going to be bad, or what position groups are going to be especially good, especially bad. Denver didn't have a lot of especially bad.
Mm-hmm.
I won't get too bogged down here. I'll jump to KC. I had Kansas City winning 13 games as well. So this is going to be a tiebreaker situation here. They have a really challenging schedule, but at the same time, they are a really challenging team to play. And that was my thinking there. For the Chargers, I have the Chargers actually only going 9-8. I think they're in a challenging division, as I've already mentioned, and I don't think any team in that division is a true pushover. They have some really difficult matchups with games against the Eagles later in the season as well, or at least one game against the Eagles later in the season, and I think that's going to be tough for them. And then finally, Vegas. Where is Las Vegas?
LV.
Huh.
Did you accidentally mark them as the Oakland Raiders?
I've got them right here. Okay, I don't know why they were down there. And then I have the Raiders going 7-10. I think their floor raised by the Geno trade, but I don't think they're a super talented roster top to bottom. So 13-4 for the Broncos and for the Chiefs, 7-10 for the Raiders, and then for the Chargers, 9-8. That is my AFC West. What about yourself?
All right, yeah, we're not too far off. I have some similar things here. So at 4, I have the Raiders. 6-11 is the record that they ended up with for me. Okay. So one game off of the record that you had. Doing our little games that are important exercise that we are doing kind of at the last moment here. I'm looking at week 4, home hosting the Chicago Bears. I think could be a pretty interesting game because the Bears are kind of a prove-it team. Like, I think on paper they are supposed to be better than the Raiders, but they have a young quarterback. They have a new coach with Ben Johnson, of course. Whereas the Raiders, they brought in some veterans like Geno Smith, for example. So it'll be kind of this team that's not expected to be good but has veteran players versus this team I think people think are going to be better this year, but they have to show it. And if they do show it, it has to be on the road. So I think that could be a pretty interesting game. Marred by, honestly, for this whole division, a pretty easy schedule. AFC South, a lot of AFC South on these schedules. So a lot of Titans, or at least Titans, Jaguars, Colts, I feel like are all relatively weak teams for each of these guys. And then they also play, mention the Eagles for the Chargers. That does mean they get to play the Giants. And they get to play the Cowboys, which I don't think either of us are particularly high on. So a lot of easy games for the AFC West this year, which I think is worth mentioning, which is probably why our records ended up being so high for some of these teams. Next, I have the Chargers.
Did you have them, before you move on, I'm sorry, did you have them winning against the Bears or not?
No, I had the Bears winning on the road.
Interesting. I actually did have the Raiders winning that game, but I could definitely see it going either way.
It'll be a close one. That's why I wanted to point it out. I think it'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah, I like that one. I think Cowboys Raiders similarly is a game between two teams that I think want to be competitive but have some question marks. And if they can push themselves past a more established team like the Cowboys, that would suggest we're maybe in a different era of Raiders ball. That is week 11, Raiders hosting that actually on Monday Night Football. So doing it on a national stage would be great for the Raiders rep. So that's my game. If I'm going to make you do it, I have to do it as well, of course.
That's fair. I actually, originally when I did this, I had all three teams tied for the first seed, which was crazy. Okay. But I did dock the Chargers after the Rashawn Slater injury, so they fall here at 11-6, which is still 2 games higher than you had them, which is totally fair. I mean, like we said for the Chargers, they're kind of always an on-paper team, and on paper it looks fine, and then something terrible happens during their season and they fall apart, which could very much happen again. But as I mentioned, they have the Tennessee, Jacksonville, Indianapolis. I actually have them an important game for me when I was looking at their schedule, week 17 against the Texans, because the Texans absolutely gobsmacked them in the playoffs and embarrassed them out of the postseason. And hosting them, I think it'll be a good chance for revenge, especially so late in the season when it could make or break a potential playoff berth for them. And I did end up picking them to win that game because they had home field advantage and wanted playoff revenge. So that was one for me that I wanted to outline. Yeah, a lot of weak opponents. They had also the Dolphins on their schedule, which I don't have a ton of faith in. Really, I just had them losing. I think I had them splitting with Denver, losing the Chiefs, losing the Eagles, and the Commanders. Those were their losses for me this year. So that's why they end up with 11 wins. Not because I think they're going to be a great team, but they just play a lot of weak teams.
Yeah, I'm seeing here that I had them lose to Miami in week 6, which I would love to speak to myself when I did that. It's an interesting pick. I also had them losing to the Giants. Okay. I guess I had faith in Russ. I think you got in my head about the Giants defensive line, but that's for another week. I think my big game would be week 3. That's hosting the Broncos Sunday at 4:05. I have the Broncos sweeping them. I think if you can pick up that divisional win against a team that's probably of comparable ability early, such that week 18, the Broncos can't take that season sweep with a win going to their turf on week 18, that could be a good early one to both prove your presence in the division and then also not fall too far behind. But I could definitely understand, especially looking at some of my dubious choices. Wow, I guess I just had them losing to the Jaguars as well. I think you're right that there may I may be under indexed a bit on the Chargers. I may have been a little too pessimistic, but I guess time will tell.
Yeah, we'll see. And then I had the Broncos and the Chiefs both finishing at 12-5. So I'll talk about the Broncos first. I'm a big believer in this team and Bo Nix and their defense. Sean Payton as a coach, I think, has proved that he can churn out teams that are kind of regular wins machines at the very least. Same argument that I can make for the other teams. A lot of weak games, a lot of weak opponents on their schedule that I think they will do very well against. Game I will definitely be paying attention to for them. It's going to be week 13 when they host the Chiefs. I think that's going to be a big test for them. It's kind of a crucial point in the season. The week before they have... excuse me, I was looking at the wrong schedule. I was looking at the Cowboys schedule because it's right above them. Week 11 is when they host the Chiefs. So that's important. It's right before bye week. After the bye week, they have the Commanders. And then it's kind of weird because their season starts off with a fair amount of away games too, which is strange. But yeah, I think week 11 against the Chiefs, crucial part of their season going into their bye week. It'll be important that they can beat the Chiefs or at least have a close competitive game with the Chiefs should they want any postseason success.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. I actually had most of their losses coming post-bye. I think Vegas might steal one. I think the Packers could steal one on them. But there is that pretty soft part in the kind of middle of their schedule where they're from week 6 to week 10, Jets, Giants, Cowboys. The Texans are good, but then they host the Raiders. I think you got to win those games. And one that I have circled, I think, would be that I had one Broncos Texans. I think you need to win that game to sort of set yourself apart with Houston. Like we said, being 10-7 the last 2 seasons, you want to prove that you are distinctly better than a 10-7 team, and I think a nice win against the Texans in Houston would be a good way to differentiate yourself as a top contender.
Yeah. And then I had the Chiefs 12-5 too, like I mentioned. Something interesting that I thought for the Chiefs, I actually am not that high on them as a team. A lot of my picks ended up swaying their way because a lot of the good teams they played this year, they host. So, for example, they host Philadelphia in week 2, they host Baltimore in week 4, they host Detroit in week 6, Washington in week 8. Those are like the best teams they play this year, basically. Yeah. And they are home for all of those games. And as you know, the Chiefs' kind of home stadium in the Patrick Mahomes era, at least, can get very rowdy and loud, and it's difficult for opposing teams to play in. And I think that, they might not win all of those games, but I think it will definitely play a hand in their favor. So I'd definitely be looking at week 2 against Philadelphia, Super Bowl rematch. They got kind of smacked around in the Super Bowl, so I think they'll kind of have to show that they're still a team to mess with. Then they do get the Giants the week after, which is kind of a freebie. But then Baltimore, big game, week 4. Freebie, Jacksonville next week. And then another big game, Detroit. So kind of interesting their schedule alternates in that way.
Yeah, they definitely get a sort of one-on, one-off from our preseason assessments, right? And then, of course, one of these teams might end up being another 11-5 team that we don't know about, right? So I had them winning most of those home games. The only one I had going to the away team was Baltimore coming to KC in week 4. I think week 9, they travel to the Bills. I think the Bills are the best opponent they have to go visit, and it's not even really close besides maybe the teams in their division. And I think if you want to be the 1 seed in the AFC this year, you have to win a game like that. I think there's going to be 3 or 4 teams highly concentrated at the top. I think the Bills will be one of them. If you can't steal games from teams like that, you're not going to get the 1 seed in the AFC. So that's my watch is week 9. But yeah, that's a great point you made. They get to host a lot of their hardest matchups and then travel for their easier ones. And that can be a huge advantage. It can be a huge advantage for them.
All right. Shall we move on?
Let's
spin that wheel. All right, we got the AFC North next.
Nice. Okay.
Why don't I start this one off since you did Yours first last time.
Sounds good.
Okay, at the bottom of the AFC North, shocking nobody, I have the Cleveland Browns. 3-14. Just
Wow.
an abysmal schedule. They have a lot of hard teams on their schedule. There's not a lot of easy ones for Cleveland. I'm looking at their schedule right now, and I'm like, where did I give them 3 wins? Perhaps when they host Tennessee, maybe that was one of the wins I gave them.
Yep.
New England week 8, like I could have given them that one. But yeah, I mean,
Yep.
Buffalo, Baltimore, obviously divisional opponents. Detroit, they have to play. There's a lot of tough teams on the schedule for these guys. And obviously, the thing that is reigning over all of the Browns' narrative is who the heck is throwing the ball for this team. It'll probably be Joe Flacco in week 1 would be my guess. And I don't think it'll be Joe Flacco by the end of the year. So who will it be? I don't know. And that's kind of the problem, right? So I just feel like this team is kind of driving without a steering wheel. So I don't know. That I just made that up. I've never heard that before. That's like, what is that called? A euphemism? Nope, that's wrong. Is that?
An idiom? An
idiom.
adage?
It's definitely an idiom. Not a...
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so they just look quite bad. If I had to pick a game on their schedule that I think matters, how about the very first week of the season when they host the divisional rival Bengals? I feel like you got to start your season off strong if you're this team and you had this weird off season and a lot of people don't know what's going on. You want to make an impression early. I don't think they will. I think the Bengals will probably kill them. But that'll be a good, I think, we'll see like, oh, okay, this is how the season's going to go for the Browns. Got it.
Yeah, Bengals do have a history of slow starts, so this could be a game. Sometimes bad teams start off really strong because of sort of, we saw the Saints last year, kind of a fluky result, so could end up being a surprisingly fun game. Yeah.
Yeah. And then after the Browns, I have, no surprise, the Steelers, 6-11. Not a lot of wins I gave to Pittsburgh. I just don't believe in whatever they're doing over there with the Aaron Rodgers experience. Of course, it's weird. And again, like we just talked about for the AFC West, with the relatively easy divisions, the AFC North, they all have relatively hard schedules. So they play a lot of NFC West teams, I believe, this year. So like they play the Seahawks, who I think will be okay. They play some AFC West matchups too.
I think they play the NFC North.
NFC
all 4
North,
teams.
yeah. Oh yeah. Each of them have, like the Browns have San Francisco, so each of them have like a random NFC West matchup, which is strange, but not the whole division. And then, yeah, I mean Pittsburgh, they play Buffalo, they play Detroit, they play obviously their strong other divisional opponents. So it's going to be a tough schedule for them, and I don't believe in them really at all. Week 1's going to be really fun against the Jets. Aaron Rodgers going back to New York. I think that'll be fun. I don't think it'll be a good game, but it'll be fun. Justin Fields, obviously, the other way. So kind of that fun little QB rivalry. I don't think that's going to be an important game, but I did just want to point it out as like a fun game. How about week 8 when they host the Packers? That'll be fun as well.
Yep.
Aaron Rodgers hosting the Packers. So a lot of fun games on the schedule, and I think they'll lose most of them.
Yeah, they're really trying to lean into the Rodgers of it all, I think. And TBD on whether that truly produces an exciting slate of games, or whether it turns out that maybe they just aren't as competitive as they want to be and then fall flat. I am curious, before we move on, how much do you know about how the schedule is actually created per team in the NFL?
I mean, I don't know a ton. Obviously, I know you play the divisional opponents twice a year. I know they rotate through an opposing division in the other conference as the years go on. And then in terms of the other games, like the random games, I don't know how those come about.
So 99% sure they actually do rotate in both the NFC and the AFC. So if you look at Pittsburgh, they've got the AFC East as well as the NFC North, right? And so that will just rotate year to year. And then I believe those other matchups are based on divisional placement in those other divisions. So if you're the second best team in the AFC North, you'd play the second best team in XYZ.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah. And I think that's mostly the system there. Yeah. I just figured that's worth going over for sure. The fans as well, in case they were not aware. So that's where strength of schedule can really vary, is if you're playing a naturally strong division or naturally weak division, just based on that rotation. But they do try to control for some of it with the divisional ranking. Yeah, we vary on Pittsburgh. I'm excited to go over our thoughts and compare them. But who's next on your AFC North totem pole?
Next, flip that record. I got the Bengals at 11-6, second in the division. Yeah, I mean their offense is still going to be really good. It typically is really good. They start off, like you mentioned, they have slow starts, but the first 2 weeks of the season are Cleveland and Jacksonville. So, like, you can't get much better opponents to start off slow against. And then even Minnesota in week 3, with the receivers being out for them, J.J. McCarthy probably still getting his feet wet. That'll be interesting. I feel like their first real test is going to be week 4. Denver hosts them. So that'll be kind of, are they real? And then they host Detroit in week 5, and that will be a fun game that I look forward to watching, probably with you. Yeah, and then they just have a lot of easier games until they get this gauntlet, week 13, 14, 15, Baltimore, Buffalo, Baltimore. That'll be terrible for them. I don't know if I picked them to win a single one of those 3 games. That might have been 3 of their losses right there. And then they close out with Cardinals, pretty weak team, I think, and then the Browns again. So, yeah, I think a lot of it for me was, again, not the craziest opponents they have to deal with, aside from like the Ravens in their own division, I think, and then Buffalo, Detroit, some of those harder teams is probably where I had their losses coming from.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have a lot to talk about once I give you my AFC North records. That's all I'll say.
I can't believe you have the Steelers going 15-2.
That's a little conservative, don't you think? Easy 16-1 club. Yeah.
Yeah, but I have the Ravens winning the division 13-4. I think, according to my records, they are the team I have with the second best record in the AFC. So I suspect they'll have a very good season. I think they're clearly the best team in the division. They have a lot of their hard games really early on, so kind of the opposite of the Bengals, like I was just talking about. Buffalo in week 1, Detroit in week 3, KC in week 4. For Buffalo and KC, they're on the road for both of those games. So those will both be true testaments. But after their bye in week 7, they have a pretty easy schedule, honestly, for like most of the year. They go Chicago, Miami, Minnesota, Cleveland, New York, Jets, Bengals, Steelers, Bengals, Patriots, Packers, Steelers. It's like a pretty fair schedule to close out the season. And I think they are kind of going to be coasting once they pick up a few of those wins. So for me, I'll say, Buffalo week 1 is huge. I feel like these are like the 2 best teams in the AFC. So I think that's going to be a huge matchup. Detroit in week 3, I think, will also be pretty big. And then, of course, the Chiefs in week 4. Those are the big 3. They have to win probably at least 2 of those games to really show that they're like, I think, the dominant AFC powerhouse they want to present themselves as.
And so you had them at 15-2, you said?
13-4.
Oh, 13-4. Okay.
Yeah.
My bad. Okay. Well,
I'm ready.
My turn. I definitely think I agree with your assessment on the Ravens, and we'll get to how emphatically I agree with your assessment soon. But yeah, I generally agree with kind of the overall shape, starting with Cleveland at the bottom. I had them 4 wins as opposed to your 3. The Heed the Call podcast 2 main hosts are Browns and Jet fans, so I hear a lot about the bottom of the AFC. I know, it's tough. It's tough. I feel like as a Lions fan, for many years it was catharsis.
Yeah,
but
that's fair.
They talked about last year, like the Browns with Jameis Winston randomly putting up a fight in divisional matches, and I think that's where I have them taking that 4th win, hosting Pittsburgh week 17. Otherwise, I think for the most part, this team is just playing better teams. And if they had even mediocre play at quarterback, right? And maybe I was discounting Joe Flacco a little bit, I would have felt more confident giving them wins over some of these teams. But the fact that it's such a wild card means that when I'm trying to picture the worst case scenario for both teams, the worst case scenario for the Browns is so much worse. And I had them beating a few of the teams that were on your hit list. I did have them beating the Titans there. And I think their other 2 wins come against the Dolphins and Patriots heading into the bye. And I would say if we're looking for a game to watch out for, it's whichever game is the first game where Joe Flacco is not starting for them. That could be week 1, that could be week 15. But I think that when you are thinking about the future of the Browns, that conversation doesn't start until you move Joe Flacco out of the starting lineup and let Sanders, Gabriel, maybe Kenny Pickett, Snoop Huntley take the reins and try to usher in a new era. If I had to guess when that might be, I could definitely see it being week 7 and 8. I could also see it being coming out of that bye against the Jets.
Post-bye, for sure.
Post-bye would be good. It's just tough because they kind of alternate challenging opponents. I could also maybe see them looking at, after they play the Ravens in week 11, from week 12 on, you've got Raiders, Niners, Titans,
Niners is tough.
Bears. Yeah, Niners is tough. But I guess I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Because then after that, it's like, oh, yeah, Titans, Bears, that's reasonable.
Bills.
And then they host the Bills. Yep. And then you've got the Steelers, who are going to be defensively capable. So hard to say, but I'd say I'll circle week 9. I think that'd be a good game to at least put a rookie in or put a young player in and see if they can make something happen.
Yeah, definitely want to throw them in against not one of the best opponents on their schedule.
Yes, for sure. If you put them in against the Ravens, then you should fire the whole staff. Let me go to my next highest team here. In third is Cincinnati, not Pittsburgh, at 8-9. I really am pessimistic about their defense. Yeah. I think that when I was thinking about the Steelers, I could talk myself into the Aaron Rodgers situation. I could talk myself into the fact that they at least have like a solid wide receiver, a solid tight end. They have pieces there. When I look at Cincinnati's defense outside of Trey Hendrickson, who isn't even given his extension yet, so we don't know what that's going to look like. I just really have a lot of question marks. And then even on their offense, yes, they have 2 remarkable wide receivers. I don't know if they have a super standout running back. I don't know if they have an offensive line that strikes fear. It's just hard to look at 3 players, those being Joe Burrow at quarterback, then Jamar Chase, T. Higgins at wide receiver, and say those are enough to be a true difference maker, right? Even if you throw in Hendrickson. And so I have them dropping a few games against teams that I could definitely see going the other way. I have the Jets pulling out a win. I have New England pulling out a win just because I think those teams must win at some point, and I think the Bengals are not foolproof on defense, and that can burn you once or twice.
Telling me you don't have any 0-17 teams on your predictions here.
If it wasn't the Browns, I don't think so. I may or may not have a 16-win team, though. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay. Pittsburgh Steelers 16-1. No, I don't believe that. If I'm watching a game for the Bengals, gosh, I would have to probably look at, Bengals Vikings in week 3 feels like a good one in terms of the Vikings are a team in the NFC that feels very much like they're hovering around 9 to 11 wins in terms of what we perceive them to be. J.J. McCarthy will still be early on in what is effectively his rookie season. And that would be huge if the Bengals could go up to the Vikings, put a win on that team. For similar reasons, Bengals-Broncos that next week, week 4, would be a big game for them. And I do have them stealing a game against the Bills in that brutal 3-week gauntlet you mentioned. It's Ravens is sadistic.
Yeah, it's tough.
But I think that's all the more reason. These games early in the season, you got to pull out more of those than you expect. They play Green Bay in week 6. They play Detroit in week 5. That's like a less brutal murderer's row from week 3 to 6, and you probably want to win a minimum of 2 of those games to keep your season in good shape when you head into that three game stretch at the end of the season with such challenging opponents. I'll jump now into Pittsburgh. 9-8 I have Pittsburgh, so not too far off. I have them performing fairly well. I think a lot of it was the fact that I don't think Aaron Rodgers will be awful. I think he will be adequate, and I think there are a number of teams where their quarterbacks could be awful. So I have them starting strong with 4 straight wins. I think he'll low-key play really well against the Vikings because there was all that smoke about him joining Kevin O'Connell, and then that never materialized. So I could see him filling with virulent rage at being, maybe stuck with a second-choice team, something like that. But I have them kind of falling off near the end of the year. From week 13 to 18, they're playing Bills, Ravens. I don't think the Dolphins are too challenging. Lions, I don't think the Browns are too challenging. And then the Ravens again. But that Browns matchup is divisional. I have them dropping it. And if they didn't, it'd be 10-7. So firm grip on the second spot. But yeah, this is another team that I think goes as far as their weakest link goes, because they have a capable defense with strong veterans. They have a solid supporting cast. It really just depends on whether Rodgers is a boom or bust quarterback, which I don't think he's been historically, or whether he can continue to be steady Eddie and give them decent play all year so that they're beating the teams they're supposed to beat.
Yeah, it's fair. I think I'm just so out on the Aaron Rodgers of it all. But I think, I honestly think part of it is that I don't like him as a person. I'll say it.
No, I don't. I don't like him either. I didn't want to be pro Rodgers. I just feel like there's part of me that knows I'm going to have to think about him more than I want to when the season comes around. And that would be because he's good, right? Or because he's abysmal, and I don't see him being abysmal. So top of the AFC North, I've got the Baltimore Ravens. And oops, they're 16-1.
Wow. Big Baltimore fan.
Big Baltimore. I mean, I think it's just really hard because, I like that they added another safety in Malachi Starks at the top of this year's draft, just making a strength stronger. And they're such a capable team start to finish. Now, does this mean I think they'll win the AFC? Not necessarily, but just looking matchup to matchup, they have actually a pretty soft second half of their schedule. They've got from week 8 to week 14. I think their best opponent is the Bengals, and I don't see the Bengals being a huge roadblock for them. After their bye, it's Bears, Dolphins, Vikings, Browns, Jets, Bengals, Steelers, and then there's the Bengals game, and then the Patriots. Like, just looking at all these teams and thinking about how conflicted I was on some of these records, a lot of those games feel pretty sure-handed to me. And so for the game, I'll point out it's the one I picked as a loss, and that was Ravens-Packers. I just feel like traveling to Lambeau in December, it is a little random, but I think Green Bay is a capable team. And
you think in week 17 they're going to stop being undefeated?
It's possible.
That's late in the season to drop that ball.
Yeah, I mean, it would be tough, but I honestly would rather lose in week 17 than have that undefeated pressure headed into the playoffs. That's just me. I would say that if I'm looking at realistically, if I wanted to make them a 14-3 team, which is maybe more responsible of me, I would look at Ravens-Bills week 1, and I would look at Ravens-Chiefs week 4. I just have to imagine they are so bitter.
On the road for both of those.
Yeah. The Chiefs don't wow me in right now. And if Rashee Rice has a suspension, I think that especially would change how we view the start of their season. And I just think Ravens-Bills, I was looking at their first round, and I don't want to get too into the Bills right away, but I just wasn't overall as gobsmacked maybe at some of the talent they added. And I think the Bills need a little bit more out of their young talent to reach an undisputed top of the AFC status. So helped by a division that I don't think is as fearsome as something like the AFC West also, right? The Chiefs might be closer to this, or the Broncos might be closer to this if they were in the AFC South, for example. But yeah, it's a little silly. If I was going team by team, I probably would have made that like 14-3. But
hey, we like the dramatic numbers for sure. I'm good with that.
We have a short. If you want to clip something from this episode, this might be a clippable error.
Right. Error. Don't say error. All right. Let's go to the AFC East. That is what I just spun. So we'll save the whopping AFC South for last, I suppose. So that's great. AFC
Nice.
East. Why don't you break down your teams? I suppose, and I guess you were doing alphabetical order. But then that one alphabetical. That one you did 4-1. So whatever works.
You're right. So I'm going through. I'm going to read them all super fast, and then okay, that team is probably going to be at the bottom. I really had no faith in them. That team is going to be at the top for sure. And then who's the fourth team in this division? Boy,
Jets and Dolphins are the two middle ones that I'm sure you're debating between.
Nope.
Patriots. They're in that division.
We'll get there.
You said this team is going to be at the top. I assume you meant the Bills.
I did. Let's start with the team I have at the bottom. That's the Miami Dolphins.
Oh wow, Dolphins hate.
I can't think of a lot of ways the Dolphins got markedly better besides this offseason's greatest move, which was acquiring Minkah Fitzpatrick. But I think in today's NFL, I'm sorry. No, I think it was a fine trade. I think they couldn't have predicted the injuries to their corner room.
Yeah, their corner room immediately falling apart after is pretty sad.
Here's a few factors I think put Miami near the bottom, right? There's the reputation, and maybe this is just hardened by the media, and I'll admit I'm a media shill, whatever, that they fall apart as the weather gets colder and as the season wears on, right? Yep. So that put them at a significant – I actually didn't have them winning a single game after their bye, so that's what I think about them in cold weather. Also the fact that Tua – unfortunately has a considerable injury history. There's the fact that Tyreek Hill is a huge question mark for them right now in terms of commitment. Who's he going to be on the field in terms of quality of play? And so for all those reasons, I guess I have them winning 5 of their first 6 and then losing out.
Wow. Dang, that's crazy.
A part of this was that I was swiftly attempting to move through each of these teams, and there are teams that I had more faith in, and I wanted to reflect that faith. I could easily see this actually being a 7-10 team, right? I have the Browns besting them. I have the Saints besting them. I could see those two turning. I have the Jets. They actually split with the Jets, which I think is pretty reasonable. But yeah, I think if I'm looking for a game that jumps out as a contest that's going to matter for this team, I don't see them being an upper echelon AFC team, regardless of how you slice it. I'd look at maybe a game like Week 11 hosting the Commanders. That would be an important game to take a team that's sort of that second tier of the NFC, depending on how you look at it, maybe the first tier, but lower first tier, upper second tier team. If you're the Dolphins, that's probably what your best case scenario is going to look like, considering the top of the AFC. So you're going to want to maybe beat another team that's in that bracket. I also think their game against the Steelers in week 15 might be a slightly more attainable version of that. If you're battling for an AFC wildcard spot, Steelers are going to be right around there. You need to get a win against them. In fact, that 2-week stretch, week 15, 16, is Steelers and Bengals, and I think both those teams are wildcard contenders. So if you can pull out one or both of those, that makes me feel a lot better about this being a team that could sneak into the picture. But I guess I don't think there's a chance they will.
That's fair.
So you're thinking the next team is going to be New England, and maybe it should be, but up next I have the Jets.
It's crazy.
7. It's crazy. It's crazy. At 7-10, and I have a lot of faith in the Jets as a team that has multiple players who are at the top of their position or near the top of their position, right? Quinnen Williams is very good, but I'm really looking at Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson being at the sort of top 10 range for their respective positions. I think Justin Fields is a type of player that watching Detroit lose to him consistently reminds me that having a truly mobile quarterback can be a matchup breaker. And I think that was a deciding factor for a few of these teams that maybe don't have as strong of a linebacker room. Seeing them potentially take a step forward and beat some of those teams. And so one team that I identified as a candidate for that potentially, I'm almost totally missing them on the schedule, though I was 99.9% sure this game was real. Yes, Jets Bengals week 8. I had them winning just because I think when you have a mobile quarterback going up against a soft defense, and you have multiple ways to attack that defense, it creates considerable challenges. And so I could see that being a game that they steal. I think they have a pretty soft back end of the schedule from weeks 14 to 18. They have the Bills week 18, but they play the Dolphins, Jaguars, Saints, and Patriots, and they host the Patriots in week 17. That feels like a winnable 4-game stretch and a good way for them to build momentum going into the next season. So if I have to pick out a game for them that's going to be worth watching, worth keeping track of, I'll say Patriots Jets week 17. They're hosting that game. If they can win that game convincingly, and maybe if they could even sweep the Patriots, which I don't necessarily see happening, but that would maybe put them in a good spot moving forward for the hierarchy in the division. Now, second highest team is not Buffalo. It's New England. I have New England going 9-8 for some reason. There was just a lot of hype around Drake May, and I think if Drake May is a plus starter, that's going to set you apart from the Dolphins and the Jets if he's like really dynamic. And I think the Patriots also benefit from a relatively soft schedule, right? Let's say just for the sake of argument, they split the series with Miami. They split the series with the Jets. Well, they still get to play the Saints, the Titans, the Browns. They're going to play the Panthers, who aren't the most intimidating team. They're going to play the Giants. Those are all teams I could see them conceivably getting wins against, right? And then all you would need is a few more upsets against some softer teams. They play the Raiders as well. And, this team's in a good spot. And they did sign a number of quality starters. They have a potentially very dynamic quarterback. They drafted a running back high who could come in and support that quarterback. They have a defensive-minded coach. Yes, their roster is probably a more bare cupboard than I'm willing to remember, but I could absolutely see them putting on a surprise performance. Now, I think if this team makes it to the wild card round, it's because Miami and the Jets are both pretty abysmal and they're able to feast on those teams. But could I see them being the 9th best team in the AFC? I think that's within the realm of possibility. A couple games that would help make that possible would be week 4, Panthers, Patriots, both teams looking to rebuild after multiple years of mediocrity. You want to win that game. And they have a game hosting the Patriots hosting the Falcons in week 9, And that's another team that, again, is kind of in that middle road. A lot of the games I'm looking for teams are when they're playing against opponents of an equal perceived level. And I think those are two teams that are kind of in that middle pocket. And then finally, I'm sorry, I know I've been going off on this division forever. Buffalo going a very reasonable 14-3, dropping a game against Baltimore in week 1, dropping a game against New England, and then dropping that game against Cincinnati. Again, that New England game could easily go either way, but I think that there's just divisionally always a chance something slips, and I have the Patriots being that team to steal a game from them. I think they're a very competent, confident team, and so I want to see them beat the Eagles in week 17. I want to see them put up a great fight against the Ravens in week 1, and I want to see them handle the Chiefs or stay toe-to-toe with the Chiefs in week 9. I think you're going to see what kind of team this is at the beginning, middle, and end of the season, and whether they're on track to truly be an upper echelon team in the AFC just based on those 3 games, I think, are the barometer for the Bills. So that is my backwards AFC East, I'm sure, from the perspective of your list. I am very eager to see where you put each of these teams.
Yes.
Now that we've gone over.
Yes.
Let's do it.
This will be the most different so far, I think. I have the Patriots at the bottom at a swimming 5-12, which is not great, and a lot of it was tough for this Patriots team because they do have a relatively soft schedule. I think I believe I had them going 1-1 with both the Jets and Dolphins. They have the Panthers, the Saints, the Giants. Some weak teams on there that they can get some wins against for sure. That might have been I might have just rallied off the 5 wins I gave them right there.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I think the rest of their schedule is relatively competent. But and you mentioned Drake May. I'm a Drake May believer. I think he's going to have a good year. I think he had a good year last year. There's just not a lot else going on that team outside of the quarterback position. They do bring in Diggs, who could not be fully healthy. There's like conflicting reports about his status. And then outside of that, their offensive weapons are none. There's no names.
Can't believe you're saying this about Pop Douglas. This is brutal.
Douglas. I think we've mentioned him in every episode of the show, probably.
I brought him up because I was listening to our last episode today, and you said Pop, and I got amused. So yeah,
I love that. He can just be the recurring guy for sure. And then their defense also, I think, leaves a little to be desired. You talked about in our offseason one. I think maybe your number one favorite offseason move was the Mike Vrabel hiring. I do think that's important and will matter in this team's kind of culture and success. I just think it might not necessarily manifest this year to a lot of wins, but I think it could start instilling that stuff for them for the future. And I think this is a team that needs a couple more drafts at the top to kind of get the rest of their young core before they start really becoming a team to be reckoned with. So
perfectly fair. I might be 1 year ahead of the curve on this, so this will be fun to watch over the course of the season for sure.
I think a team that you were swaying me on, so I have the Dolphins here at 9-8, which is much higher than you've had them, I think. Like 3 or 4 games.
Wait, are you saying the Dolphins are your third highest team in the division?
Yeah.
Oh.
And 9-8.
All right. Okay.
And I had them here, and when you were talking about it, I was like, yeah, you're making some good points, actually. And they definitely have a brutal part of their schedule right smack dab in the middle. They go against Baltimore, Buffalo, Washington, 3-week span. They host all 3 games, but I don't think it really matters against those specific teams. So we'll see about that. I didn't mention, sorry, for the Patriots, a game that I thought would be relevant for them. I'm going to say the Falcons week 9. Yeah, I think 2 teams that are kind of young quarterbacks proving themselves. I think both of them have the pieces to be relatively not competent, but like not horrible, not abysmal. So we'll see kind of how they look and how both teams look at that point in the season. Anyways, back to the Dolphins. When you were talking about them, I was like, you know what, you're making some good points. I forgot about the lack of corner room they have now. I forgot about Tyreek kind of being a wild card at the moment. Tua is always a wild card, it seems. And outside of that, there's not a ton going on. I do like that they have Devon Achane. Sometimes he's not healthy. They still have Jalen Wright. And they drafted somebody that I can't remember right now. Another running back. Ollie Gordon.
I remember them doing that.
I think it was Ollie Gordon.
Oh, yeah, that sounds right. Yep.
Who I did like at Oklahoma State. So we have a couple of guys in the offense that I think is interesting. Their defense maybe leaves some questions to be desired. But you mentioned, I think, having them lose to like the Saints and the Panthers, which are just teams that I think are so bad that surely the Dolphins can claim some victories over them. And then they play like the Colts in week 1, and they don't even, their quarterback, they have an or in their quarterback depth chart right now. So I don't know what's going on with the Colts.
The Colts have an or. I did have them winning that game and against the Panthers. Though I think the Panthers might be sneaky good. Yeah, they have or. Oh, that's sad. That's really sad.
You haven't seen that?
I feel like I remember hearing about this.
Yeah,
but...
their quarterback depth chart says Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones at number 1. It's like, what does it even mean?
Wow, that's really sad.
Yeah, that's awesome. So hopefully
I assume you have the Colts winning 12 games then.
Sure, yeah? Sure. We'll get to the AFC South after this. That'll be really fun to talk about. I do have the Jets tying with the Dolphins at 9-8. So not too crazy. They're not. I don't think they're going to be this awesome team, but I'm a Justin Fields believer. I put him on the thumbnail of episode 1 of our podcast because I said it was a great offseason move. I may have said I think I said number 2. So, shout out Justin Fields. They do start off not great. Buffalo week 2, Tampa week 3, who I think is a pretty good team. Pittsburgh in week 1. That'll be interesting to see that specific matchup. But then they kind of have teams that I really don't believe in. I think I had them going 1-1 against the Dolphins. I think they'll beat the Cowboys when they host them because I really don't believe in the Cowboys. They host the Panthers. They host the Browns. They host the Falcons. Then on the road against Jacksonville, New Orleans. They just got a lot of bad teams on their schedule. So I think I think I had them just beat most of the bad teams because I think I believe in them more than the bad teams. They're like not a good team, but they're not a bad team. They're somewhere in the middle, I think.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think your thinking for the Jets was kind of my thinking for the Patriots, where it's a relatively soft schedule. And then I think you had a little more faith in the Jets being the team that can take advantage of that schedule. But I mean, I had them at 7 wins. I'm not super far off where you are. I can see how they would get to 9. It would require a season that I think would make Justin Fields the presumed starter going forward. But I would love that because I think Justin Fields is a really fun player.
Yeah, that's a fantasy sleeper for me right there, Justin Fields.
Ooh, good call. Good call.
And then, of course, winning the division, to no one's surprise, I have the Bills. This is the highest record in the AFC. Actually, this is the highest record I have for any team overall. I have them at 15-2.
Wow.
They just have a very favorable schedule. Kind of like I mentioned with the Chiefs, too. They host all of the hard games. So they actually host the Chiefs, like you mentioned, in Week 9, the Ravens Week 1, the Eagles Week 17. Those are obviously the 3 hardest games on their schedule. They host all 3 of them. Week 17 will be particularly interesting because that by then the weather could have like a snow game or something like that. We'll see. Yeah, and then aside from that, like the hardest road game, here are their road games: Jets, Falcons, Panthers, Dolphins, Texans, Steelers, Patriots, Browns. That is just a cakewalk of road game schedules right there.
Soft. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I just feel like this team has something to prove. They've always been so close, but hasn't quite gotten there yet. I think, in terms of a talent standpoint, Josh Allen is up there with Lamar, I guess, as like the best QBs in the league. So I feel like they are right there. They have the tools that it takes, and they're ready to do something, I think, here. So I have them clearly winning the division. Any of those 3 games I mentioned earlier, Baltimore, Chiefs, Eagles, obviously, are going to be the big 3 that I'm looking for them. Maybe the Eagles I'll point out just because it's right before the playoffs, and that could give us kind of a good picture for how both teams are looking going into the postseason. I guess I didn't specifically mention a game for the Jets. Say the Cowboys in Week 5. Are they a real team? Are either of these teams real teams? That's a question going into the season, and we'll talk about the Cowboys when we get to the NFC next time.
This is just getting me really excited for the NFC because there's a few teams that I dragged through the mud, and I think they must have been in the NFC or in the AFC South because I know I should have lower records than this. So
every team is winning 12 games. How's it even possible?
I don't know how I pulled this off, but
I didn't have any ties in mine. Maybe I should have had some ties in here. That would have been interesting.
There were some games that I looked at and I was like, can I just say that Falcons-Dolphins is a tie and not have to think about this, please? I can't stack those 2 rosters in my head, but it's the love of the game. Love of the game. We don't need to spin the wheel because we're doing AFC South. We saved the best for last.
Oh, goody. I'm so excited to go through my AFC South records.
Please start us off 4-1 from 5-12 to 9-8. Take us there.
Wow, you're not far off. You are really close.
Oh no.
My 4th team I have the Tennessee Titans at 4-13. It's pretty low. It's tough for Tennessee. They start off at Denver, and they play the Rams. I think those are just clear losses. I probably had them splitting with the Jags and the Colts. So there's two of their wins right there. And then the other, like, not great teams they play this year, the Cardinals, the Patriots, the Browns, the Saints. So I probably had them win, like, two of those games. And then somehow we're 4-13. Cam Ward, I think, will be a fine rookie. I'm excited to see what he can do in this offense. I'm not sold on his receiving threats at the moment. Maybe they will prove me wrong. They just had the Tyjae Spears injury. We'll see when he comes back. They still have Pollard. Is he still over there? Tony Pollard?
Yep, he's there. He's their number one.
And then I don't know if I can name a single player on their defense, so that's not good.
I was looking them up today, so that's how I know them. But yeah, my brain still goes Kevin Byard. Is Kevin Byard still?
What was that guy's name? I want to say Javon Curse. Is that a Titan? From ages ago?
I think Harold Landry just went to the Patriots.
That's a good one.
The one I saw today that I was like, oh, that's a good player is like Tavondre Sweat, I think, but he's also injured. That also might not even be the right name. So
Javon Curse played on the Titans from 1999 to 2003, and then again from 2008 to 2009. Wow.
So not currently on the roster then?
Not currently on the roster. I mean, that's amazing.
Is Delaney Walker still tight end for them? That's my question.
That's a great name. I like that. They got Chig Okonkwo, the truth.
Oh, good pull on the Okonkwo. It was funny because I looked up Titans receivers because like, wait, I know we talked about the receivers.
Calvin Ridley.
And Google just pulled up 3 names. And it was the only 3 names I was trying to remember because they're the only ones who were relevant. It was the guy who played with Cam Ward in college.
Yeah.
It was
Restrepo.
Restrepo, yeah. Right? Like Xavier Restrepo. Yeah. It was Calvin Ridley, and then who's the third one? I'm quizzing you.
You're quizzing me. Oh, jeez. It's not Traylon Burks. He got released. It's not. Nick.
If I tell you this player's former team, you'll guess it right away. That's why I can tell you.
So this is his new team.
This is his new team.
Oh, jeez.
You brought him up when we went over the.
Yeah, I can remember kind of, but I'm not gonna get there. I don't think.
Old Seattle Seahawk.
Oh, Tyler Lockett, ancient
Tyler Lockett, legend. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know about that one, Tennessee. So 4-13. Anyways.
Yep.
Similarly, one game above them, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars at 5-12. So not a great team either. They suffer this hell from week, let's say 4 to 7. They got San Fran, Kansas City, Seattle, LA. It's a tough 4-week schedule. Even the Bengals and Texans in week 2 and 3 are not great. Week 1 against the Panthers, that'll be fun. I'm really excited to see that, I guess.
All right.
I keep forgetting to do games. Titans, I'll go to week 7 against the Patriots. I think that'll be fun.
Nice.
Cam Ward versus Drake May. Jacksonville, they then have, like, it's crazy because they have a lot of easy games, which is I feel like how I got them to 5 wins because I really don't believe in the Trevor Lawrence experience anymore. I just feel like he's had too many years to get there, and he's not there. Travis Hunter will be fun, I guess. I like BTJ a lot. I think he'll be clearly their best player on offense. And maybe their only relevant player on offense, and then their defense is constantly irrelevant. Do they still have Josh Hines-Allen? That guy's pretty good.
They do have Josh Hines-Allen, yeah. Who is their... Do they have a running back of note?
They had ETN. I think they still have ETN. He was kind of getting replaced by Tank Bigsby sometimes last year.
Oh, Tank Bigsby.
And then I think they drafted somebody else, so...
I'm sure they did.
That's what
teams love
do.
to draft running backs.
They're just like, why do you have 5 running backs to your roster? And then they retire at 28, and it's like, oh, okay. I guess that's why they just keep getting them, because they just keep leaving. Jacksonville, let's point out the epic game they're going to have with the Colts week 14. So excited to see that.
Yeah, that's a must-watch. There ever was one.
I'm very excited to see what quarterback's playing for the Colts at that point. That's for sure. Which brings me to my next team, the Colts. 6-11, one game above the Jaguars. So 3 extremely negative records here in the AFC South, which I don't think is super shocking. Again, same schedule, same opponents, same losses against all the good teams that they play, like the Broncos, like basically the entire NFC West, in lieu of like the Cardinals probably. They also have the AFC West, so both Western divisions I think they will struggle against relatively. I'm not sure what's going on with their QB room, and I'm not really sure what's going on really anywhere on their team. I can't point at anything and be like, yes, I'm very excited about this. This is going to be awesome. But I like Anthony Richardson. I hope he wins the job. I think he can be okay. Jonathan Taylor is still a relatively good running back. The receiving threats haven't really panned out. A.D. Mitchell didn't do a ton last year. Alec Pierce gets like 50-yard throws thrown at him, and that's about it. Michael Pittman Jr. is kind of getting up there in age. And then that's another defense that I'm just like, who's on this defense? I don't know. Excited to see Tyler Warren, I guess. Yay. That's about it.
That'll be exciting.
The Colts. So, yeah, none of these teams are making the playoffs, as you might imagine. And then I actually have the Texans winning the division pretty concisely, I know, at a whopping 9-8. I'm not even really a big believer in the Texans either. So when you said earlier 5-12 and 9-8, you were not far off. Yeah, that's what I ended up with. Is 9-8 at the top for the Texans. Interesting. I'm interested to see how C.J. Stroud's going to bounce back after what many will consider a sophomore slump. I think Nico Collins is a very good receiver. I think Joe Mixon is old. Currently on the NFI, if I'm not mistaken. So don't know what's going on with that. But we'll see Joe Mixon. And then aside from that, not a lot to be excited about on the offense aside from Stroud and Collins. And then defense, you have Will Anderson and they do have Derek Stingley. Those are kind of their playmakers there. I think they'll feast on this division a lot. But outside of this division, I think their schedule is pretty tough. I mean, on the road against the Rams, on the road, Baltimore, Seattle, host San Fran and Denver, which I think are better teams. They host Buffalo, which I think is a better team. So I'll say week 8 against San Francisco. I actually don't think San Francisco is that good of a team, despite what my record is going to tell you when we talk about the NFC next time.
Yeah.
Mostly a schedule thing for the NFC West. I got a lot of wins in that division. So we'll see. But I think week 8 could be an interesting test for both of these teams.
Yeah, I come down in a similar boat in a lot of ways in this division, but I have a few changes here.
They're all low. That's all that matters.
They're all very low. So in terms of the total wins I have in this division, I have, doing the math, these teams combining for 23 wins.
Yeah, 24.
And
so
you have 24. So I think we both feel the same way. I, throughout this entire process, told myself, the thing with the Colts I got to remember is that Shane Steichen has gotten them to decent records despite the quarterback play last year. So I got to make sure not to put them too low. I have the Colts winning 3 games this year. And that might be my lowest record in the AFC. I don't know how. I really don't know how we got here.
That is your lowest, by the way, because you had the Browns winning 4.
The Browns winning 4. Yeah, that's what I thought. The Browns aren't the only team winning 4. I think what this comes down to for me is quarterbacks are just bad. And I feel like every other team kind of in its bucket got markedly better in a way the Colts did not. And I'm looking at a team like Vegas, who granted I suppose was worse last year, but I just feel like, oh my gosh, the world of difference between like a Geno Smith and a Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson at this point in their respective careers is huge.
That's fair.
And Yeah, this was kind of on accident. I think in hindsight, I would maybe put them closer to where you had them at like 6-10. Maybe that would be a little more sensible.
Right.
But honestly, just a lot of teams they're playing that I don't see them like coming out on top against, right? I mean, like Broncos, Rams, Chargers, Steelers all feel pretty solid. I don't see them beating the Seahawks, Texans, and Chiefs. I think the Texans will sweep them. So I have them splitting with the Titans, splitting with the Jags, and then I think their other win was the Cardinals, and that was, I think Vegas can beat them with a better quarterback.
Yeah.
I guess they're just the victims of being the team that I was maybe just least excited about. And so when I was picking between a team that gave me a reason to think about them and the Colts just didn't give me much of a reason to think about them. And they might be suffering for that.
There's a lot of teams here that's just like, or a lot of matchups rather. They're just like, some bad team has to win this.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, like, when I was every Miami game I picked, I was like, someone's got it. Every Falcons game, I was like, one of these teams must win. Not because they're the worst team, but because they're like the 20th best team. And there's so little difference in my mind between 16 and 25. And I think the Colts are just kind of a victim of, in my mind, not having made improvements to their roster that are measurable. Now, I think if I'm going to eat my words, it's because the receivers, the receiving core in general plays better than I expect. Maybe we get a jump from A.D. Mitchell. Maybe Tyler Warren is transcendent.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say I think the most important matchups for this team, I'll look at both matchups against Jacksonville, week 14, week 17. I think I kind of had a similar assessment for the Jets, but you want to be able to beat at least one other team soundly in your division. And I technically have the Jags ahead of the Titans, but I just kind of like what the Titans are doing, or have more hope for the Titans than I do for the Jags long term. Speaking of which, on the Titans, I also have them at 4-13. I think they are not a particularly strong roster top to bottom, a lot of anonymity on defense, though some talent, and they've made some investments. L'Jarius Sneed, I was reading about, granted he's been banged up, but he was a player they invested a lot in, and if he plays to potential, that could help them out a lot.
I do like
Kevin
L'Jarius
Zeitler from the
Sneed.
Lions. I'm sorry?
I like L'Jarius Sneed.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I just heard L'Jarius Sneed. I was like, I know you have. Yes, I like L'Jarius Sneed too. I think a solid player, potentially, if that Devondre Sweat player steps up on the defensive line, that could be good for them. And then I know they've made some offensive line investments of late, and I could see that potentially giving Cam Ward enough of a foundation. I did take offensive line pretty reasonably into account with a lot of these teams, and the Titans didn't have the most abysmal one. And so I think that gave them just a slight edge for me. But most of these teams I have them losing to. I have them stealing a game from Houston, beating the Saints, and then splitting the series with the Jags and the Colts. And that's where their wins are coming from for me. So similarly pessimistic. I'll look at a game like they play. I'd like to see Titans Bears. That would have been a fun game. I would have liked to see kind of the week one or the first overall picks battle or something like that. But I don't think we get that this year, unfortunately.
Come on, they played Jacksonville twice. Number 1 overall picks, battling it out. Trevor Lawrence, Cam Ward.
So true. I should really highlight those as games I think are important and I should watch.
I want to mention real quick while you're looking for a game. When you were talking about the Colts playing the Jags in weeks 14 and 17, I don't like that the schedulers do that. Why can't one of them be at the beginning and one of them be at the end? Why are they 3 weeks apart at the end of the season?
Yeah,
happens
and
a lot.
I mean the Bengals too, right? 3 weeks, and yeah, it's unfortunate. I think they should have. I wouldn't even hate if they necessarily made division matchups like at set points during the schedule. Like you will always play a divisional opponent week 2, 4, 6, and weeks 13, 15, 17, or whatever. And then
had like a whole division rivalry week or something for like the whole league. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I know they're doing those rivalry uniforms now or jerseys as like part of the promotion with certain teams, and so you could emphasize it in that way. And also, what's cool about that, if you have a division that's geographically close by, let's say it's the NFC North is a good example where Minnesota, Green Bay, Chicago, and Detroit are all in a reasonable bucket.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you sell like, I want to buy a divisional ticket to go travel to one of these games, and so I can buy my divisional ticket, and then I learn it's the Bears. Okay, now I can book my hotel for the Bears, and like I know for a fact that on that week every year I will be able to travel to or attend that game physically because it will be at one of these set locations that's near me. I feel like that could be kind of cool for people wanting to travel to games, but
yeah, but that's smart. The NFL isn't smart, so well.
Instead, they're gonna go full NBA and just have teams play 3 times a week and then take 2 weeks off, and yeah. Game to highlight for the Titans. Let's go. I'm trying to think of another team that has like a recent high pick. I'll do Patriots Titans week 7. I think if the Titans put up a competitive showing and Cam Ward looks comparable, they're hosting the Patriots. That gives them a bit of an edge. That'd be a great game to say, hey, we drafted a quarterback to have optimism about too. It's not just the Patriots. Jags. Let's do the Jags. I have them at 5-12 as well. I don't like the. So we got those middle two, and I was like, oh, okay, this is similar, but we're going to be separate on the Colts, and both pretty much equally pessimistic about the division as a whole. I think the Jags just don't. I don't want to like the Jags. I don't want to think Liam Cohen is an offensive mastermind. I just don't like the vibes. I don't think that.
I know how you feel about James Gladstone.
Not a huge Gladstone. Not a huge Gladstone guy. I just feel like it's so easy to look at the Jags as the next like Rams tree, offensive mind, comes head coach. I just see them becoming a narrative that I'm sick of. The same way I am sick of, like, with all respect to Sean McVay, Kevin O'Connell, it's nothing against them as coaches, but a lot of the analytics heads of the NFL, I feel like love to glorify that tree of coaches. And I can see this
Kyle Shanahan
being something. Yes, I don't want to have to do this with the Jaguars as well, please. I'm okay if the Jaguars aren't that team.
It's even worse because they're so bad. It's like, look how awesome they are. They're not.
Right. So the thing is, right, if they go 9-8, then Liam Cohen will be considered a savior of all saviors, and then I have to, glorify Liam Cohen. No, thank you. And again, nothing against Liam Cohen. It's just his, he's last in the order, right? We've got Mike McDaniel and just all these coaches. Anyway, so it's really just personal and completely biased. And also, I'm kind of betting against the Jaguars, which I do hate to say. I could see the Jaguars having strong offensive coaching, having a solid performance from Lawrence, and going something closer to 7, 8, 9 wins, right? I currently have them losing to a team like the Jets. I have them splitting with the Colts and Titans. I could absolutely see those games flipping in their favor, and suddenly they're around 500. But I just don't feel really great about who the Jags are. They traded a ton away to get Travis Hunter, and unless Travis Hunter, which would again be another storyline that would become dominant, right? If Travis Hunter is good, then it is all we will hear about until time's end. I think a lot has to go right for them to be the best version of themselves. I think Brian Thomas Jr. is on an island as an offensive weapon unless Travis Hunter is a standout receiver from day one. And if I'm looking at games for the Jaguars that I think could define their season or maybe give us an indication of who this team is, I'll look at I don't want week 10. I want week. Wow, where is week 3 they host the Texans. And I think if they're a team that believes they might be a Travis Hunter away and that's had fringe playoff success and they want to make the case, hey, we're meant to be in this conversation, prove it by at least splitting it with the obvious head of the division right now, which is the Texans. If you can't do that, I'm not going to be feeling great about your odds the rest of the year, even if you can clean up against teams like Arizona and against Tennessee. I won't believe it until you give me a signature win. Finally, I have Houston. Oh, I clicked on the wrong team. Oh, I might have that team winning my division. I don't like that. Houston, I have at 11-6. So I have them a little bit higher than you do. I think it is perfectly fair to have them a little lower. Just trying to go against my bias. I was feeling very skeptical of them as well, but unlike the Jaguars, I think they have more of a reason for me to believe in them. And so I gave them a week 1 win against the Rams because I think that Stafford might still be coming off his injury or might not be at 100% in that game. And if that's the case, that gives Houston a distinct edge.
You don't believe
if Stafford's
in Jimmy Garoppolo?
I don't believe in Jimmy Garoppolo. Thank you for asking. I actually do not believe in Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think against a Texans team that's got, solid talent, they're just really injured. If players come back later in the season healthy, that could give them a big boost near the end of the year. But I still have them losing to the Chargers, Chiefs, Buffalo, and Denver and Baltimore, right? And I think that goes to indicate where I think they are in the conference, which is firmly a high wild card / worst division winner comfortably in the conference that is at risk of being picked off again. So that is my AFC South. Did you want to go over the standings?
Yeah,
for the conference?
Why don't we just quickly do our conference, just our playoff, just our 7, I think.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds good.
So I'll hit you with mine. I just have to calculate it really quickly in my head. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep, here we go. So, in some order of 6 and 7, I will give 7 to the Chargers, 11 and 6. I will give 6 to the Bengals, also at 11 and 6. I will give 5 to, I'll say, the Broncos at 12 and 5. 4 goes to the 9 and 8 Texans, winners of the AFC South. Congratulations, love that for you. 3 goes to the Chiefs, 12 and 5, tied with the Broncos. So whoever actually wins that tiebreaker or whatever. 2 Ravens, 13 and 4, and then 1 would be the Bills for me, 15 and 2. That first round bye.
I think it's a pretty reasonable shape. I think I'm going to probably end up in a similar bucket to you here. I'm just trying to see if I can suss out based on division. No, I think unfortunately I have the division records for the Chiefs and Broncos being the same, so I can't necessarily separate them.
You can swap those or whatever happens. Yeah, it's whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I know that my wild card isn't coming from the AFC South. I don't have all my records in front of me, so I'm just making sure that I'm not missing any obvious teams. Where did I have the Chargers? I had the Chargers 9 and 8. Ooh, I had the Chargers. Oh, Cincinnati, I had 8 and 9, and then Pittsburgh, I had 9 and 8, and then I also had the Patriots at 9 and 8. Interesting.
What a competition for the wild card those teams will be.
Okay, here's what I'm going to go ahead and say. I'm going to say of Pittsburgh, of Pittsburgh, of the Chargers, and of the Patriots.
Right.
I have the least confidence in the Patriots. So I'm going to go ahead and make my 7, the Steelers. I'll make my 6, the Chargers. My 5, I'll make the Broncos at 13 and 4.
Strong 5.
And then a very strong
Gonna
5.
Dominate the Texans in the first round.
Yes. I think they actually play each other during the regular season. I do have Denver winning that game. I actually have them. Yeah, it's Broncos at Texans, and I have Denver winning. I think they'll rematch that win again. At the 4, it is Houston at 11 and 6. At the 3 divisionally, that is the Chiefs at 13 and 4, which puts up at the 2 the Bills 14 and 3, and then the 1 seed, a very reasonable 16 and 1 Baltimore team.
Yeah.
So, I feel good about the shape, even if I would maybe switch some of those numbers around.
Sure,
I think in general, the Bengals being close to that feels about right. And the Patriots not making it feels right to me as well. So I'm glad that was the arbitrary decision that was made.
Yeah, so I guess the only team difference we had is I had the Bengals and you had the Steelers in. Otherwise, we had the same 6 teams aside from that. All right, that'll be our bet. If I lose, I have to get you an Aaron Rodgers Steelers jersey. If you
that sounds like I'm losing if that's the case. But
if you lose, you got to get me I don't know, miscellaneous Bengals player X. Vontae's perfect.
Perfect. What a pull.
Don't want that one.
Don't want the Ocho Cinco jersey, or
I'll take an AJ Green.
AJ Green's good. I was gonna say, if I'm thinking
AJ
of Bengals, I'd want to rep. Green is near the top of the list for sure.
I'll take an Indy Dalton, but it says Red Rocket or Red whatever his nickname is instead of
Red Rifle.
Red Rifle, thank you. Instead of Dalton in the back, it just has the nickname. That'd be kind of cool.
Oh, that'd be sick. I'd get you Marvin Jones.
Oh, there you go.
When he was a Bengal before a Lion. There you go.
Got some good options here. I actually don't want a Bengals jersey. When I really think about it,
I don't want a Rodgers jersey. It's terrible. Maybe we'll get to the. Maybe what we'll do is the winner gets to like punish the loser by making them get a jersey they would never want or something like that.
I'm gonna be really eyeballing those divisional matchups between the Steelers and the Bengals.
Yeah, those are gonna be great watch. I'll be watching the AFC East too. We were pretty far apart on that, so I'm gonna be curious to see how that matriculates.
And then we can go back and I'll clip out only the parts that I was right and make sure to put those as the shorts.
And it's gonna be this like, yeah, I think the Ravens will go 3-14, and then that's gonna be my short. And like, come on, Damon. I had a different unreasonable record for them. Please. I'm really excited for the NFC now. This has got me jazzed.
It's been 2 hours, so I guess it's good that we didn't try to talk about all 32 teams.
Hey, I think it just goes to show our love of the game. Any last thoughts, or are you ready for the field goal here?
I'm ready for the try. I've heard I got some feedback, of course, last time, some people thinking that kick shouldn't have been good. It should have maybe hit the bar on the side. It was a little close for comfort. So, we'll see how today looks. We'll see how forgiving the officials are when it comes down to that ruling. But I think you doinked in when some people thought you should have doinked out. So,
and that's their right. I think in honor of Cam Little, I'm going to attempt this from 72 yards out. That's my...
try to break the preseason record here.
Yeah, for those who assume that I'm actually putting it in the same exact spot I do every week, thanks for watching and listening every week. And I'm okay with you thinking that if it means that you're subscribing, liking, commenting, and engaging with our shorts, following, leaving us a great rating. All of those things would be welcome. And I'm going to reward you with a beautiful paper football performance today for your loyalty.
Yeah, we're looking at expanding TripAdvisor, Yelp, perhaps. Gotta really get our name out on the review sites, I think.
I think that would be big. I think that we should have an Uber that we share responsibility driving, and then the name of the driver is just Ethical Ball, and then people can rate us accordingly.
That's really good. I need to get
I don't know if they have good football takes,
but
they drive. You not have air conditioning still?
Yeah, I'll do it one day. It's really hot. It's just so warm.
I imagine. I've had broken AC in my car in Texas, and I've not been a fan. I'll pick you up if you have to drop your car off.
Yeah, what I need to do is to go to the place by work before work, have somebody bring me to work, and then bring me there after work. I just haven't done it.
Yeah, that'd be a big move. I like that move for you. Well, hey, I don't have anything going on, so if you need me to do that for you, so be it.
You can hang out at in-service with us.
Hey, at least I'd see real human beings. All right. Are we attempting?
We're ready. The NFL preseason record.
Here we go.
I gotta line up my uprights here.
Okay. You ready?
I'm ready.
I like the hold.
I didn't see it. I didn't see it at all. And if I didn't see it, it can't be good from 72 yards. There's actually a timeout, though. They tried to ice you, so you get that attempt doesn't count. You get.
I'm taking a second attempt then. And I think that first one would have been good if the refs were watching for it.
I didn't see it. I didn't see the ball, and if I didn't see the ball from 72 yards, there's no way it had the distance.
It's fair. All right, loading up. 72 yards. Kick is up.
Oh wow! Oh okay. I think we dinked in right at the bottom of the crossbar for an NFL preseason record 72-yard kick. It's good.